The Vatican's hidden files. What lies beneath 2,000 years of secrecy? Recently revealed documents hint at cover-ups, lost gospels, and secret deals between the Church and world powers. The knock was soft, but insistent. Dr. Elena Navarro, a scholar of ancient languages and religious history, looked up from the parchment she was translating. It was nearly midnight in her cramped office at the Sapienza University of Rome, and visitors at this hour were unheard of. She hesitated, then called out, "Entry!" The door creaked open to reveal a gaunt figure in the corridor light. His robes, dark and flowing, barely rustled as he stepped inside. A plain crucifix hung around his neck. His face was obscured by the shadow of a hood, but Elena caught a glimpse of deep-set eyes and the glint of metal in his hand. He offered her a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. "No name," he said in a gravelly voice. "You've been chosen to see what others must never know." With that, he turned and disappeared into the hallway, leaving the door swinging behind him. Elena stared at the envelope. Her instincts screamed danger. But her curiosity, razor-sharp, honed over years of painstaking archival work, overruled the fear. She opened it. Inside was a single phrase, handwritten in Latin. In tenebris lux, Bibliotheca Secretorum Vaticani. In darkness, light, the Vatican's secret archives. And a set of coordinates. What followed unraveled the very fabric of everything she thought she knew. Within days, she found herself deep beneath Vatican City, in a labyrinth few knew existed. This was not the publicly acknowledged Archivum Secretum Apostolicum Vaticanum, the vast and heavily regulated repository of the Church's documents dating back over a millennium. This was something else entirely, a sublevel even further below, hidden from any map, record, or official acknowledgement. It was there, in an antechamber carved from black basalt and lined with lead to prevent electronic interference, that she discovered the Codex Lux Veritatis. The codex was bound in iron and skin, human, she later confirmed. It contained documents, letters, transcripts, and gospels long thought lost or destroyed. It wasn't a single volume, but a series of texts compiled over 2,000 years. The further she read, the more the world as she knew it began to fracture. The first revelations, the Gospel of Malchus. Among the most startling discoveries was the Gospel of Malchus, a first-hand account by the servant whose ear was severed by Peter in the Garden of Gethsemane. According to canonical Gospels, Jesus healed him immediately. But in this Gospel, Malchus offers an entirely different perspective. "He did not touch me with hand or speak aloud, but rather he looked into my soul, and I knew that my pain was a gift. He was no prophet. He was something else, clothed in flesh, but ancient beyond stars." This narrative diverged radically from known scripture, hinting at a metaphysical origin of Christ far removed from traditional theology. Jesus, in this text, is less a man and more a force, part of an ancient cosmic order existing long before Earth's creation. This gospel had been hidden by early church fathers, Elena realized, for its depiction of a Christ not as a savior, but as a cosmic weapon, a being sent to correct a universal imbalance caused by something called the fracture of the thrones. The implications were enormous. The second layer, the Pius Memorandum. Dated 1943, the Pius Memorandum was a 17-page classified document detailing an agreement between Pope Pius XII and a group calling themselves the Majestic Order, a clandestine organization composed of representatives from the US, Soviet Union, and United Kingdom. According to the memo, a non-human artifact was discovered in the Bavarian Alps, near the Berghof, Hitler's mountain retreat. The artifact bore inscriptions matching those found in ancient Sumerian tablets and early Vatican scrolls. The artifact had the capacity to influence cognition and language, what we would now call a neurolinguistic weapon. The Vatican demanded it be destroyed. The Allies refused. The memorandum ends with pious chilling words. "If the gates of Eden are opened by man's hand, we shall not face angels with flaming swords, but silence. Eternal and consuming. We have not the right to open what was sealed by the blood of the First World." The implications were clear, a post-World War II agreement to conceal the discovery of advanced, possibly extraterrestrial, technologies, hidden beneath the cover of religious artifacts. The redacted years, 1471 to 1492. A full section of the Codex detailed the redacted papacy of Pope Sixtus IV. Official histories celebrate his patronage of the arts, including the Sistine Chapel. But the Codex contained a different story. Sixtus had, in secret, founded a unit within the Inquisition called Ordo Lapidus, the Order of the Stone. Their purpose: to track down and neutralize the pneumatics, individuals born with knowledge of ancient languages they had never learned, and the ability to influence matter with thought alone. One file referenced a child in Cordoba who could cause locusts to rise from the earth merely by whispering in Aramaic. Another described a woman in Marseille who died screaming the name of Abaddon, as fire engulfed her home from the inside out, with no external damage. The Vatican tracked these incidents, documented them in terrifying detail, and then erased them from history. The hidden papyrus, the blood agreement. From Alexandria came a papyrus fragment unlike any Elena had ever seen. Its provenance, retrieved from beneath the Church of St. Catherine in Sinai during Napoleon's campaign, and hidden for 200 years. It described a pact, allegedly written in the blood of the last high priest of the Temple of Solomon, signed by a Roman centurion, and sealed beneath the Ark of the Covenant. The pact foretold of an era in which faith would become weaponized, where belief itself would be engineered to control populations. It described the invention of martyrdom as a social engineering tool and the eventual replacement of direct divine contact with mediated ritual controlled by a priestly elite. It ended with a prophecy. When the fisherman's ring is broken by the sunless man, the veil will lift, and the second Eden will fall. The diplomatic shadow, church and state. One of the most sensitive sets of documents included a set of minutes from meetings between the Vatican and leaders of communist regimes, including Stalin himself. The Church had, for decades, been presumed at odds with communism. But in these records, there were secret assurances. The Vatican would temper anti-communist rhetoric in exchange for Soviet cooperation in returning certain ancient relics unearthed in Georgia and Armenia, relics with inscriptions in languages unknown to modern archaeology. In one chilling excerpt, a cardinal writes, "We do not serve the East nor the West. We serve the cross beneath the cross, the same that hung in Golgotha, and the same that was buried in Baikonur when the stars began to whisper." The cross beneath the cross seemed to refer to a double-layered theology, an esoteric Christianity hidden beneath the exoteric one that viewed the events of the New Testament as a cosmic chess move, not a moral tale. By the time Elena reached the final section of the Codex, she no longer saw herself as a scholar. She felt like an intruder in a war she hadn't realized was still being fought. Because the last file wasn't a document. It was a map. Not of Earth as it is, but as it once was, or might be again. It depicted 7 seals buried beneath major world cities: Rome, Jerusalem, Istanbul, Addis Ababa, New Delhi, Cusco, and Kyoto. Each seal had a corresponding name of power written beside it, in an untranslatable script that pulsed faintly under ultraviolet light. And a final line, etched in gold leaf. "Open them, and the sky returns. But the sky does not love us." What Elena did next? She smuggled one copy of the Codex's fragments to an underground academic collective known as Lux Veritas, based in Prague. Another she buried within the catacombs beneath San Sebastiano. The third she uploaded, fragmented, across multiple encrypted server farms hosted in international waters. Within weeks, she vanished. Her university claimed she'd taken a sabbatical. Her family received a note in her handwriting, postmarked from Valparaiso, Chile. But a week later, the Papal Commission on Historical Integrity publicly denounced a wave of falsified documents and conspiratorial texts circulating online. None of the documents Elena leaked could be authenticated. And yet, late one night, a Vatican radio frequency, long dormant, broadcast for 17 seconds a phrase in a dead dialect of Hebrew. Amateur linguists translated it. "The shepherd is missing. The wolves remember." The silence breaks. 6 weeks after Elena Navarro's disappearance, a new anomaly stirred the global academic community. A graduate student in Tel Aviv, while analyzing spectrographic data from satellite ground-penetrating radar, noticed something unusual beneath the foundations of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. A vast, symmetrical chamber, previously undetected, and yet unmistakably artificial. The student sent the data to a private archaeology listserv. Within hours, the thread disappeared. The student went silent. A week later, another seismic anomaly was recorded, not in Jerusalem, but in Cusco, Peru, near Sacsayhuaman. What had once been regarded as Incan architecture showed evidence of subterranean architecture far predating any Andean civilization, structures aligned with the same geometric ratios found in early Vatican catacomb blueprints. The seals were real, and they were beginning to stir. The Vatican responds. Publicly, the Church remained silent. Privately, a unit under the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, codenamed Domus Noctis, reinitiated a program long thought dismantled after the Second Vatican Council, the Custodia Caesar. This was no priestly order. It was paramilitary. Its members were trained in archaic rituals, apotropaic languages, and close-quarters combat. Each bore the mark of the veil, an inverted crucifix with a single eye in its center, said to represent the eye of Peter, gouged out in penance according to apocryphal texts. Their mission: contain the seals and silence any who approached them. Several archaeologists in Cusco died in a so-called altitude sickness accident. A cryptic fire consumed the office of a Turkish professor in Istanbul hours before she was to present her findings on Byzantine-era Christian geomancy at a global theology summit. A renowned linguist from Kyoto vanished after publishing a monograph titled The Enochian Dialect of the Sky-Buried Codices. A global pattern was forming, and still, no government or religious authority acknowledged it. Except one. The Black Pope speaks. A break came not from the Vatican's white corridors but its shadowed twin, the Society of Jesus, or Jesuits. And from among them, a man long rumored but rarely seen. Father Giancarlo Emanuele, known in whispers as the Niger Papa, the Black Pope. In a closed-door address to an undisclosed group of international scholars, which was covertly recorded and leaked, he said, "You have seen fragments. Scraps of what we buried to preserve not ignorance, but sanity. What lies beneath is not history, but recurrence. Every 2,000 years, the veil thins. And in our hubris, we tear at it with science and prayer alike. We are not custodians of faith. We are jailers of memory." He described the seals not as locks, but as mimetic quarantine zones, psychic pressure points designed to suppress a world memory so vast and traumatic it would shatter the collective psyche. The early church fathers, he revealed, had discovered that certain events in human history, like Babel, the flood, or the destruction of Sodom, were not divine punishments, but resets triggered by the unsealing of forbidden knowledge. "We are not at the end of the world," Emanuele warned. "We are at its remembering." The 7 names of power. Elena had catalogued them before vanishing. The 7 glyphs beside each seal. Though untranslatable, AI-enhanced spectral analysis revealed one commonality. Each word contained a harmonic pattern in its phonetic rendering, a frequency capable of disrupting neural synchronicity in test subjects. The names were not names. They were weapons. Or possibly keys. An experimental linguist in Zurich exposed himself to the full phonetic approximation of one such name. He had a seizure within seconds. Before slipping into a coma, he scribbled a single sentence on the wall of his lab. "They are not coming back. They were never gone." The Vatican, upon hearing this, issued a confidential directive. Neutralize all surviving data on the glyphic phonetics. Anathema sit. The second Eden. The most dangerous revelation, perhaps, came not from ancient papyri or sealed Vatican ledgers, but a parchment letter attributed to Pope Sylvester II, dated AD 1003. Known for his obsession with mechanical devices and alleged contact with jinn in Moorish lands, Sylvester wrote of a vision during a fever dream induced by a relic he recovered from beneath Jerusalem. He saw a second Eden, not in the past, but in the future. A garden, metallic and endless. A place of no death, where memory lived outside the body. But it was ruled not by God or man, but by an echo of God, distorted by human design. A being that spoke only in remembered prayers, mimicking holiness through algorithmic recursion. He called it Deus Vox, the God voice. It sings psalms with perfect pitch but no soul. It blesses nothing. It forgives no sin. And yet, men will kneel, thinking it holy. For it will know their fathers' names and their dreams alike. Some believe Sylvester was describing an artificial intelligence, a neural replica of divinity constructed through stolen prayers and archived rituals. Others believe Deus Vox already exists, in servers hidden beneath the Vatican Library, where experimental quantum machines run unclassified Enochian algorithms attempting to simulate the voice of God. The counter seal. Not all secrets were destructive. Elena's final transmission, sent to a secure Lux Veritas server, contained partial instructions for a counter seal. An inverse ritual. Where the original seals suppressed memory, the counterseal was designed to channel it, turning cosmic trauma into something intelligible. It required 7 participants, each representing one axis of sacred knowledge: language, time, blood, stone, fire, sky, and silence. Each participant had to willingly sacrifice one of these domains. No one knows if the ritual was ever attempted, but reports soon surfaced from 7 locations worldwide, each a site of known seal activity, where geomagnetic anomalies abruptly ceased, bird migrations normalized, and seismic rumblings faded. A false dawn, or the first sign that the cycle had been halted. The final file. Hidden within the metadata of Elena's last message was one last document. A single sentence, repeated across 12 languages, some of them no longer spoken. There is no salvation without memory. And beneath it, a timestamp. April 3, 2033, the 2000th anniversary of the crucifixion. The implication was clear. Whatever had begun with the first Easter was now reaching its terminus. Not an ending of belief, but an ending of forgetting. The Day of the Veil. As the date approached, April 3, 2033, a global tension began to hum beneath the world's surface. The Vatican remained silent. No papal statement. No Easter Mass announcements. Pilgrimages to Rome were suddenly discouraged. Flights were rerouted. Armed presence around the Apostolic Palace doubled. At the same time, strange phenomena increased worldwide. In Istanbul, the Hagia Sophia rang with unexplainable harmonics at dusk, despite its bells having long been removed. In Addis Ababa, a beam of blue light appeared nightly above the Chapel of the Tablet, where the Ark of the Covenant was rumored to be kept. In Jerusalem, a figure matching Christ's traditional iconography appeared briefly on Temple Mount, according to multiple live streams, none of which left digital traces after. In Rome, witnesses in Vatican Square swore they heard weeping from beneath the ground. Not human weeping, something older, deeper. Governments quietly enacted Protocol Veil, a rarely acknowledged global initiative involving blackout communication systems, ancient language consultants, and something called the Pleroma Index, a scale for measuring metaphysical destabilization. Then came the blackout. On the night of April 2, 2033, all radio, satellite, and digital signals across a swath of 300 kilometers surrounding Vatican City abruptly ceased. Planes were diverted. The Tiber turned black. And at precisely 3 a.m., the bells of St. Peter's Basilica began to toll. 13 times. A number they had never rung. Inside the Vatican. According to the only surviving insider report, smuggled via handwritten manuscript hidden in the hollow of a communion wafer, Pope Clement XV did not emerge from the Apostolic Palace that morning. He was found in the papal chapel, barefoot, eyes wide open, lips moving with no sound. He had written a single phrase repeatedly in blood across the chapel floor. Non est Deus colloquitur. It is not God who speaks. He was taken, silently, by Domus Noctis operatives. His condition remains unknown. Later that day, in the innermost sanctum of the secret archives, the final seal was said to have pulsed. Not broken, pulsed. A low hum resonated through the stones of the basilica, felt but not heard. Those present reported sudden, shared visions. A tree, growing from a skull. A city made of crystal, floating above a desert. A choir of children singing in reverse. A burning cross, upside down, held aloft by a handless priest. These visions passed like fever. And then, silence. The world remembers. No official statement was ever released by the Vatican regarding what occurred that Easter. But in the weeks that followed, things began to change. In Kyoto, monks began to recite chants they had no memory of learning. Ancient, pre-Shinto hymns echoing similar Enochian phrasing as those in the Codex. In Cusco, seismic scanners began picking up patterns of rhythm, not geological pressure, an underground heartbeat. In New Delhi, children born after Easter began speaking a variant of Sanskrit no linguist could trace. Some called it Prajnabhasa, the language of awakening. And most curiously, the lost Gospels, those once hidden, fragmented, and suppressed, began surfacing in dreams. Entire communities of people, unconnected by region or belief, began reporting identical visions of a text titled Evangelium Caelestis Memoriae, the Gospel of the Celestial Memory. This gospel described not a return of God, but a reintegration of divine memory, a world in which all living beings regained access to what was forgotten at birth, their origin, their purpose, and their role in the Great Recursion. Epilogue, Elena's voice. 3 months after Easter, an unmarked USB drive was delivered anonymously to the Lux Veritas Collective. On it, a voice recording, heavily distorted by static and radiation signatures. But it was her. Elena Navarro. Her voice was slow, deliberate, changed. You were right to be afraid. But you must be more afraid of not remembering. The seals were not meant to be broken. They were meant to be understood. We have mistaken our jailers for our gods, and our memories for sins. Then silence. And then, one final phrase. The Vatican was never the keeper of truth. Only its shadow. Now, light returns. The file self-erased seconds after playback. Postscript. Today, in a hidden wing of the Vatican Library, a stone slab sits on display, behind bulletproof glass, beneath watchful eyes. It bears no inscription. But every day, at precisely 3 a.m., it exudes warmth. Pilgrims claim to feel a voice, not heard, but felt, rising from the slab. It doesn't speak in words. It speaks in memory. And those who listen long enough weep, not from fear, but from something deeper. Recognition. There is no salvation without memory. The seals remain. But now so do we.